back. We're working on this scatter plot that we created that tracks the correlation between the Dow Jones and the S&P 500, and it shows that they're strongly correlated. Now, we've made a scatter plot where we showed markers, and it maybe makes sense then that we would have control over the appearance of that marker. And this is what we're going to explore in this particular video. The way that we would adjust this is by using the keyword marker, and then that becomes a dictionary. We've seen this before when we had pie charts, right? And we were using marker to control the appearance of the data. So we're going to do the same thing. We can control things like the size quite easily. So again, we would give size and values of, need to spell marker, right? We would give size and values of pixels, so we can make them large. We can make them very small, which makes it a little hard to see. And so, I don't know, there's lots of different sizes that one might consider, but for me, 5 in this case starts to look reasonable, where I can see the individual points, but they're not so small that I can't really see them. Another issue, though, is that there are regions of this plot where they strongly overlap. So down here, we have points that are heavily clustered in this regime. And so we could think about how we might make them more able to be seen. One option is to control the opacity. And so we could say, let's make them pretty transparent. And now we can see where they overlap pretty easily, because the regions where they don't, the points are fairly light. We're seeing the white background behind them. The regions where they overlap strongly, we're seeing them as dark. It becomes a little harder to see the individual points, but we get a better impression of where overlap occurs and where it doesn't. And in a case like this, you might even get away with slightly larger points, where you can now see the individual points a little bit more clearly and the overlap regions a little bit more clearly. And then you could even make this maybe more transparent if that's what you want. So this is an option, sort of giving you this impressionistic feel of where you have the most data points. There are other options, of course. So let's go back to make this fairly opaque. And one of the reasons that they look so strongly overlapped is because each data point requires a fair amount of ink. And what we could do instead is sort of create a marker where there's just a thin outline showing us the marker, and then the inside is hollow, and we might be able to see a little bit more where these points overlap with each other. And so one way to do that is to adjust the symbol that we're using. Right now, the symbol we're using is a circle. And again, you can check the documentation to see what all the options are. Some sort of standard things that you expect will be there. Square, maybe dot, no. All right, but guess what? When you make an error like this, it's going to give you all the different ideas for what you could actually use. And so you can see that we have circle, circle open, square, square open, diamond, all these sorts of things. So circle open, that's something we might consider. This is something that will give us a circle that has a line and is empty in the middle. And here we can again start to see more regions that overlap, because we're not occupying quite so much space by the markers. Okay, something else we could do if we thought maybe we would like to have the line wider, we can't really adjust that with the size. Like if I go down to marker size 5, the circle still has this very thin line on the circle open. So how could we make the line maybe just a little bit thicker? Well, we could say line. Line is a dictionary. We've seen how we use lines in the past, and so I could say width equals, let's say 3. And now I have thick lines around the marker. So what's going on is that I can specify line properties. We've seen some of these line properties in the past, like we can create lines of different thickness or different color. And essentially what's happening is that we say the data marker has an outline, And so we can specify that using the line dictionary. We saw this when we worked with bar charts in the past, so this is not anything terribly new. What else could we do with this? Well, we could of course try to change the color. And so color equals, let's say red, just for the sake of making things easy to see. Nothing happened. Why is that? Well, because in this particular case, we have an open circle and the line is really considered the marker. I know we're adjusting it with a line dictionary, but let's say we go back and just use circle. Now what we have is a red line that goes around this sort of transparent blue marker. And so the way that we can control the line is when the line is not really just the marker as it was in circle open. Okay, this also shows that we can control the color of the marker separately. So I could say color equals, I don't know what would be, how about yellow, something sort of obnoxious here. And now I have yellow filled inside of red as the marker. And we can start to build up sort of complex looking markers and shapes and patterns this way. All right. So far we've seen that we can control the size, we can control the opacity, we can control the symbol, we can control or sort of the shape, the color, and that we can also adjust the line of these markers individually. And I think that gives us a fair amount of control over what these markers look like. And of course we can go back in and say, I don't really, let's try diamonds. We just need diamond, not diamonds, and sort of iterate through these shapes. And I don't think this is the best choice, but it does show us that we can control a lot of features about our markers when we try to make these kind of plots. And that's all I want to show right now.